So today we're going to be making some comb textures, and they're basically made out of, yep, you guessed it, combs. And this is a 12 pack of combs that I got from the Dollar Tree for $1. And they work great. They're inexpensive, so I don't mind chopping them up and making them into something else. And they do a really great job of very quickly making textures onto foam. So let's get started. We'll start out by taking our combs and cutting off the edges like this. So you have them like that. So in the case of this comb, I'm going to take off the first two and then leave one, and then the next two, then leave one, and the next two, and so on and so forth. And I'll just cut them off with a pair of scissors. And once you're done with that, you're going to want to put some masking tape on it, and you're going to want to leave masking tape that's long enough on the end so you can fold it back over. Just like that. Now we're doing this because these tines are going to want to move around and they're not very stiff. And we want to make sure that they kind of stay in place. So we're going to add some hot glue in here in between the tines to make sure that they are kind of a little stiffer and don't move around as much. It's just to kind of build up the strength of them. And then we're going to fold over the masking tape to kind of cover that, like that, and just let that dry for a little while. And then just cut off the excess. And we're going to cut these tines a little shorter so they're right past the masking tape. Like that. Now we're going to want to make it a little stiffer. You see how it's kind of bendable now? You can do that like I did on this one here. You can add another piece of comb on top of it to stiffen it up. That'll make sure that when you're using the comb and going over the foam, that it'll get even pressure on all those tines, so all your lines will be equally indented into the foam. You can also use tongue depressors. These do a great job. You can get a whole mess of these for $1 at Dollar Tree. I've used those in the past as well. For instance, here, this is an earlier version that I made of the same comb. I put one on both sides and it's super stiff and super strong. For ours, I'm just going to use this. I like to put it closer to the tines because I find it gives it a little bit more leverage. Okay, that's looking pretty good. Let's give it a test. Hey, look at that. That works pretty well. Now for the other one, we're going to do more of a random pattern because we want to have it be useful to make the vertical parts of these bricks and also the large bricks here. So this is really up to you. You got to keep in mind that the gap between the tines that you choose to keep on the comb are going to determine the size of the bricks and the blocks on your final texture. Okay. You'll also notice that I don't leave the tines on the ends here, and I'll show you why in a little bit, but it comes down to how we're actually going to apply these grooves to the foam. And then it's the same procedure as before. We're going to add some masking tape, and we're going to make sure it hangs over the end so we can wrap it back around. And we're going to add some hot glue and wrap it on over, and then let that dry. Okay, and then just cut off the excess tape and trim down the tines a little bit. And just to show you a different way of doing it, I'm going to do this one with the tongue depressor so you can see how to do that. But the application is the same. You basically just glue it on. And if there's any that seeps out like that, just take some piece of foam and clear it off. And once that's on there, just cut off the excess. And you're good to go. So I'm going to be making some walls today. At first, I was actually putting these on using a ruler and having that guide me, but I quickly learned that even with the reinforcement of the tines, it's very hard to keep this on track because the tines want to go off track. So to make it a lot easier and a lot faster and more consistent, I made this. This is basically just a ruler with a high back. So this is two 2-inch strips of foam with the paper still on, and then a 1-inch high strip on the end. And then I just put some packing tape on this to reinforce it and make it smooth so I can glide this along it and it won't catch. So here, let's make the brick texture first. Just line it up on both sides. And then just with an even pressure, just drag it across, just like that. And to do the vertical, start at the bottom grout line and then go to the top one. And then just kind of move it over zigzagging. And this does become easier with practice. I find I just kind of sit down and I'll do 20 strips and I'll spend that time while listening to a podcast. And by the 5th one, I'm flying. And then once you have the grout lines in there, you can just take your texture roller here. This is just tin foil, hot glued onto a rolling pin. And I have a video on how to make these as well, but you can probably kind of figure it out on your own. By the way, this is from Walmart. It was $4, and it's just a great tool. And you can see, you get a pretty good texture out of that very quickly. And this is what I use for most of the brick textures you'll see in the Terraino Strongholds videos and manual. And so let's make the other stone texture now. The procedure is exactly the same. You just aren't going to use this guy, you're only going to use this guy. Now you'll notice, if you remember, I said don't leave the tines on the edges here, and that's because if you're making large sheets of this, so now I'm going to start one here, like that. If you want to make an entire sheet of it, it's just easier to line up the edge of this to where your old grout line was to make sure that you stay straight. Now, if you had a tine on the end here, you'd have this double line there, which is not really great looking. There you go. And then you just put the verticals like you did for the small bricks. And you just use your texture roller like you did before. With this method, you can actually texture a large piece of foam in a very short amount of time. The nice thing about this is you can texture entire sheets of foam and put them aside for when you need them, and then just cut out the bits you need. For instance, I'm about to make some walls, so I'll use our 2-inch cutting sled and cut those out of here. And just like that, now we have blanks for our walls to make, and it's pretty fast. It's great because you don't get bogged down in the texturing, whatever else, when you want to build a piece of Terraino. You just go grab off the shelf the bit of foam that has the correct texture on it for what you're making, and then you just get to work. Another fun thing you can do is actually take and cut out a triangular piece of foam. This is a 45-degree angle, and I did that by measuring out 10 inches and 10 inches and just cutting across. And you can use this as a jig for the ruler that you made, so you can actually do kind of cool angular bits on your foam. Then you just put your little triangle jig on the foam, put our ruler fence up against it, and score like you would before. Once you've got them done in one direction, you're going to want to angle it so it goes in the other direction, like this. It comes out really cool, so you can kind of see it's a neat kind of pattern. Then you can just put it in the jig that we made. You have these really cool grid squares that you can use on your grid tiles. You can also do different jigs like this one. This is one that I actually made from the T-square that I got from Dollar Tree for $1. And I just used the end measurements here, 12 inches and 8 inches, and that's this guy. And the procedure is the same. You just put it onto your foam, put your little ruler fence on there, and score as usual. The only difference with this one is, instead of going at 90 degrees to this, we're going to actually go this way. So when you cut this out, you get this cool pattern on the foam, and it only takes a few seconds. So you know the brick pattern, which is great for walls. This is one of the pocket walls from the Terraino Strongholds manual. But you can also do different textures like this, and I usually use those for the inserts. So this is one kind of narrow tine, plus a version of this tine going across. And they look great in here. They're a nice kind of difference in contrast to the exterior pieces, which are regular brick. And for wood textures like this one, I use the comb texture for the horizontals of the brick. And then I have this guy that I made, which only has a few tines because the wood planks are longer. And here's the angular bit painted up. You can see it's kind of neat. It actually gives a kind of a different texture to everything. And this is a modular grid tile plug that's using the large stone texture. So if you haven't already, you can get started right now on your Terraino journey by downloading the Terraino construction manuals at GameGearMaster.com. They are consistently rated 5 stars and come with a 14-day hassle-free money-back guarantee. That means if Terraino's not for you, no problem. You'll get your money back, no questions asked. Happy crafting.